Summer has arrived. The windows are open, the days are longer, the table is calling. It's summertime. We're getting more days off. We're getting projects on the table. We're getting the games on the table. The longer days are leading to more playtime. I mean, spring was my build-up. Summer is going to be the payoff on so many of these key projects that I've been working on. Something about the summertime, it just allows more freedom. I'm taking more days off during the summer than I probably did in the spring. And one of the things I'm going to do on those days off is hit the table a little bit more often. Sure, it's also the time of year where projects might fall by the wayside because, let's face it, we get a chance to be out. We get a chance to do more things. The whole world seems to be opening up to us starting in the spring and building through the summer. It's unlike the winter, right? Because now you've got a little bit more time. Well, as we get into today's episode, it's all about the summer. So let's get into it and talk about what looks like for me on my table. This is the Tabletop Sportcast. Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the Tabletop Sportcast, where we talk about tabletop sports through interviews, game reviews, and projects. Because the best sports moments aren't just told, they're played. I'm your host, James Cast, and this is episode 259. Unbelievable. Today is going to be the summer show. We're going to talk all about my plans for the summer. But before we get into that, we're also going to do a little recap of what happened in the spring. We're going to talk through some of the key projects, run you through some of the numbers, not just from my tabletop and from my gaming log, but also across some of the social media streams too, and use this as kind of a checkpoint on where we are with the podcast. Before we get into even that, though, we're going to take a trip around the table and talk a little bit about catching up on some news. It's been a couple of weeks, had a couple of interviews over the past few shows, and really haven't had a chance to kind of catch us up on some of the news segments. So we'll be doing that as well. But really, the main body of today's episode is going to be about the summer. We're going to talk a little bit about each of the different projects that I have going on for the next 3 months as the calendar makes yet another shift. And we're going to talk about how the focus for me shifts from one thing to another, from spring into summer, and how that's going to play out. Before we get into the spring and then the summer, let's take that trip around the table. So let's move around the table and check in on a few things happening from across tabletop sports gaming world. And we'll start over at PLAAY Games. Keith and crew just wrapped up PlayFest in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. There wasn't a big new game release tied to this event, but it does sound like there are a few things on the horizon. So that will be something that we can keep an eye on as we move through the summer. Reading through the blog post, and go check out Keith's blog post about PlayFest. I think one of the big catches, or one of the big things they were doing, was doing some play testing for what they're going to almost call like old-timey baseball, an update for History Maker Baseball, where we're going to be able to see what dead ball era and even probably pre-dead ball era baseball looks like through History Maker Baseball lens. History Maker Baseball, like most baseball games, really designed for more of the modern game. And it'll cover us through most of that 1919, 1920 time frame all the way to the present day. But baseball before that was really almost a different game. And I think they're really trying to fine tune it for an upcoming release, another new set that will be coming out probably in the fall. And we'll keep an eye on some of the other game releases that are on their way from PLAAY as we go through these summer months. Next stop as we go through the table, Sideline Strategy Games had a big digital release, and it's the Pulse PC game now available. I think if you're a big fan of Payoff Pitch, you're probably going to enjoy the digital version of it as well. I think it's staying as true as it can to Cards and Dice, or to the FAQ edition if that's what you choose to play. Not something I've really checked out myself, but I know a lot of people have been raving about what they're seeing. It looks really nice that, you get the same look of the cards that you do as your tabletop. So I think that that's something that has really been drawing people in. And of course, having a utility that can track baseball stats is always something that I think those of us who play a lot of baseball games are always intrigued by, right? Having some way of storing all of the statistics that we're generating through our baseball games. So that is our stop at Sideline Strategy Games. Next up, Season Ticket Baseball, and it continues to fill out its historical catalog. Clay has released 1915, 1916, and 1917 seasons. So now he's got all of the seasons from 1915 through 2025, and that gives us a pretty impressive stretch of baseball history. Some of the stats that are used for season ticket baseball become harder and harder to find as you get into those early years of the 1900s. And I think that's really where the limitation is. It's not that he's delaying to release these seasons. It's just that the statistics that are available are a little harder to come by. Places like Baseball Reference, and I think that's one of the key places, Retro Sheet also, they're all relying on a lot of research to get done to get caught up on play-by-play information. And until they get caught up and feel like they have a really nice, complete look at some of these statistical profiles for the players, it makes it hard to do some of these games that are really reliant on a very heavy stat-based approach. If you only need a few of the, baseball card type stats, then you've probably got everything you need going all the way back to the origins of baseball, like of professional baseball. But games that require just a little bit more fine-tuning are and sometimes going to wait until they can get that more accurate stat profile. And I think that's one of the things that Clay has been waiting for. So that's what led to 15, 16, and 17 getting released. And those are some pretty fun seasons to take part in. Next up, Powder Blue Sports. Obviously, they just hit the cover of Sports Sim magazine with Fourscore Baseball. And I was kind of looking forward to the mini con that they were planning, but, John Turnbull has had some family issues come up and had let everyone know that he had to cancel the plans for that mini con that he was going to do in October. So, our thoughts and prayers with John and his family. Really, too bad that we can't get together in October. And I was looking forward to that. Something that was, I was looking for a fall event. So I was really happy when I saw that popped up, but totally get it. And, we got to take care of our own first and foremost. So I can totally understand where John is coming from there. But hopefully that's just like a temporary pause. I think it's something that John would like to still try to get organized for next year. And, these smaller community events, they're just a great way for us to be able to get together and to connect. And we talked all about that in the last episode with Roy Pace as well. So, yeah, I really hope that we'll be able to get that on the calendar for next year. Next stop is going to be 3D6 Gaming. The Baseball FAQ Edition just got released. It's available on the Game Crafter. I actually just got my copy today, so I am looking forward to getting into that. It looks fantastic. I think this is going to be a major hit, and I've had a chance to do some play testing on the FAQ Edition. I really enjoyed what came from the FAQ Edition for FDF. I didn't find that for Fast Drive Football that the FAQ Edition improved the game that much. It definitely made it more portable. There is definitely an advantage to being able to work off of the FAQ cards and instead of like the game books. You save some time flipping back and forth. I love the improved timing mechanism that's available in the FAQ Edition for the football game. And as good as that was, this baseball version is that much better. I really think that this is how this game should have been released from the get-go. And obviously, you kind of have to go through some evolutions and test some things out. But I really think that Al found a really good niche for the baseball game. The baseball game plays so much better through the FAQ Edition. It is such a smooth engine. And the fact that he actually removed the dice, part of me hates that because I'm a dice person. I really like dice over facts. But there are places where facts make a lot of sense. And I think that the Fast Inning Baseball FAQ edition is one of those places that it really just clicks. As soon as that got released, Al, a huge Carolina Hurricanes fan and celebrating their cup win, got really into the playoff hockey and started doing some dabbling into hockey. Now, I don't think we're going to see like a hockey game anytime soon, but he did release a free game with a little game engine he had put together, and he's calling it Deck Check Hockey. So if you have a chance, go check that out. Just a little free download. But I think if you pay close attention, you'll get a feel for what he's going after in his version of a hockey game. I think it's fair to say that the reason he released this free game is it is him doing some play testing of a game engine. And the free version just gives you a little taste of it. He's going to obviously do some refinement on it. This is really just a simple kind of like player versus player, although you can play solo. But it's a really fun game. I really enjoyed the pace of Deck Check Hockey, and so I think if you're looking for just a little quick thing to throw on your table, it'll take you probably 15 minutes tops to play a game once you kind of get a feel for the mechanics of it. Check that one out. And our last stop with our game companies, 49 Sports Games. They just recently started shipping 49 Football. And what Grant Fines has done here is brought together the two versions he had for 49 Quick Decks Football and the 49 Football like on the turf football, and brought them together into like a newer game engine. I think he has, again, our game designers evolve as they go through some of their game designs and figure out some things that work. I think one of the tougher parts of being like an independent game designer is making sure that you can get enough play testing done on some things before they get released. So sometimes some refinement has to happen after the fact. And I think that's what we're seeing here with 49 Football is it was really the first game that got released. I think he learned a lot from the hockey game. He learned as he was starting to build the soccer game and went back and started to do some improvements on the football game. And the end result is this 49 Football. He actually just released a video today. I caught a few minutes of it as I was kind of getting ready for tonight's recording. And he does touch a little bit on like some of the schedule for 49 Football, some of the things he's going to be working on, some of the sets that might come sooner or later. And there was also a nice little discussion too about Canadian football. Like they've got their season going on. He's been releasing like the in-season set. And I think this is going to be a really important season for Canadian football fans because this is really the end of an era when it comes to Canadian football. And he touches on this in his video. So I would go check that out and just hear it from someone who's been, Grant, who's been a huge fan of the Canadian football leagues, and to just get some perspective on like what all of these changes that are coming for next season really mean to the diehard fans of Canadian football. So check that out too. But honestly, there's just like really no shortage of movement around our hobby right now. We've got some really good convention energy. We're just coming off of PlayFest. We have Tabletop Touchdowns coming, the Gridiron Games over at the Football Hall of Fame up in August. And there's a couple other events that'll be going on too. So, try to check those out. We're getting digital releases. We're getting historical season sets. We're getting free games. We also just got a new issue of Sports Sim Magazine, issue 23. I'm not going to go into too many of the details because I haven't really had a chance to dive in and really check out everything that's in there. But at a high level, we've got some free games that are available. We've got some game reviews that are available. And hey, we've got one more article by me too, talking about one of my projects that you'll hear a little bit about today as well. So that is something that I'm looking forward to. And we'll probably cover the newest issue of Sports Sim Magazine in next week's episode. Kind of like that'll probably dominate our Around the Table segment as we kind of go through things. So yeah, that's our trip around the table. Before we get into talking about my plans for the summer, let's talk a little bit about the spring and how that ended up working out for me. As we said, before we really fully turn the page to summer, and in between these two seasons, spring and summer, we're also going to take a look at some of the behind the numbers of how things have been going in the social media landscape as well. So we'll cover that, and then we'll get into like the summer plans. But I did want to take a few minutes and kind of look back at the spring, because I think that Q2 ended up being a really active stretch on my table. From like April through like right around June 27th, which was really my cutoff. As I've mentioned a couple of times, I'm really trying to organize my schedule a little differently. Instead of looking at each month and having like a month end like this month, June, right, is ending today on a Tuesday, and July will begin on a Wednesday. I was kind of bothered by that in the past. I always found that like those weeks became a little bit of a blend. And so what I decided is to just make everything work in whole week segments. So I kind of do this 4-4-5 approach, right? Over the 3 months of a quarter, I have a 4-week month, a 4-week month, and a 5-week month. And I've just organized it so that they're complete weeks. It just makes it a little easier for me to kind of like bracket everything. And I typically record on Sundays. So Sundays sort of become my benchmark of like, how have I done in getting the week's worth of scheduled gaming sessions completed, right? So for the past quarter, for the spring, I think I actually did pretty well this time around. I logged 154 gaming sessions across those 3 months. So that's over 50 sessions per month. And obviously 30 would mean I'm getting one done every day, right? So getting 50 means we're getting close to almost 2 per day, which is really fantastic. And I'll explain a little bit about why that took place. But 154 gaming sessions completed, and I used 37 different games. So that means almost like a new game almost every 3 days, right? And 23 different projects hitting my table as well. Not all those were finished. Like some of those were wrapped up from the winter season. Some of those were ones that I actually did complete within the spring. And some of those are ones that I started and will finish in the summer season, right? So they're all over the place in terms of like completion. But 23 different projects got touched during the course of the last 3 months. Now, probably not surprising, baseball carried the weight. I went back, I cleaned up some of my numbers, and of those 154 sessions, 79 of those sessions were baseball. So a little over 51% of everything I played during the quarter was baseball. So yeah, my spring table, not that surprising, had a pretty strong smell of pine tar, of old scorecards, and of, bullpen decisions. So what drove it? I had really 3 big drivers for baseball. First was my 73 Hall of Fame starting pitching project, which is still going on, and it will continue into the summer, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. The second one was the 1986 MLB Tournament that I ran. That was with Payoff Pitch, and that one got completed in the spring. And then I also had carried over from the winter the 1994 MLB completion project. That is still in flight as well. Kind of taking a break from it, but one of the places that I was really going after it in earnest was with Fast Inning Baseball, as I was doing some of the play testing for the new version. And I think I'm going to be picking that up too. Although I do have another season I wanted to try out with the new FAQ edition of Fast Inning Baseball as well. In addition to that, after going to IndyCon and getting a chance to see Round Trip Baseball firsthand, been in touch a lot with Gary Brown, and we've been talking about his game that he's working on and designing, Round Trip Baseball. So I've been able to get some play testing in there too. Now that hasn't dominated as much as those other 3 projects, but it has certainly been something that has been getting onto my table as well. But baseball wasn't the whole story for this spring. My XSE, the Extreme Entertainment Sports Network, my fictional, well, not even mine, but the fictional wrestling federation created by Keith Avalone that was designed to challenge the Wrestling America Federation. I really had a lot of fun doing the project. This is what the article that I had in Sportsman Magazine was about, so I really encourage you to kind of read through that. But we had a great spring run. That was my quarterly project for the spring. I got 13 different shows completed with Face to the Mat, and really took the XSC from its original show. I started with it like kicking off for the first time and running it through those first few months, right? 13 shows, so a weekly show, until the point where after like on their 13th show, it was finally time for the producer, who's the commissioner for the XSC, to finally get enough backing to throw a pay-per-view event. And that's really what we did. And we called it Apex. So that's been a lot of fun. You can go check those out on my Facebook page. I've posted every single show there just for people to kind of get a feel for it. And it was also a lot of fun because with that project, I used ChatGPT as kind of my booking partner. So every time I was getting ready to plan a show or write recaps, I was using ChatGPT to kind of help me through that. And, it's a really good time-saving device to help it with like just capturing my notes. I really got to a good place of it. Like I could feed it my scorecards and it would interpret it. And then I would clean up what it was interpreting it as. And then it would help me kind of, start to think about the narratives. And this is all covered in the article, so I'm not going to really spend too much time on it, but that was one of the big projects. The other one was Gridzone. AGL Season 5 continued to plod along. Every month I'm completing another week of games, and 6 total is what I have to get through both leagues. 6, is that right? Yes, 6. So we got through now. I've just started week 7 as I'm hitting July's gaming. So we got through week 6. It's a 10-week season, so we're a little more than halfway through. Playoff races are starting to really shape up. We've got some really great competition, especially in the National League. I posted about this the other day, but the 6 teams, I've got one team that's 0-7, and everybody else has a winning record and is in major contention, only separated by 1 game, those other 5 teams. So it's going to come right down to the wire in the National League. A little more separation in the Champion League, but, the top 4 teams are going to make the playoffs there. So we still have some really good fight going on for those playoff spots. And of course, I've kept like some projects like the Featured Table Fridays going. Had some good convention gaming by going to 2 conventions in the spring, went to both IndieCon and Digital to Dice. I had some fun like tournaments like the 2014 NWSL soccer tournament for the women. And of course, taking part in some co-ops like the 2026 PLAAY Tour, which is still ongoing, and having just a real fun time with the course selections that Paul Salzgeber has come up with. And one of the things I love about the PLAAY Tour is we get a little bit of a taste of some of Keith's courses. He uses the two original courses that were included with the game. I forget which. I think it's the Palm and Orchard from Hawaii, and of course the Augusta National, which is the Champions course. But then he goes and finds homebrew courses from gamers from across our community and brings those as part of the tour, and we get a fresh look at them every year. So great job by Paul Salzgeber. And it wasn't all sports games. The spring also saw me get a handful of family games in too. So I've really had a fun time with those non-sport games as well. One of the stats that I really liked was that for the past like 3 months, I actually had 7 brand new games that I played for the first time. Round Trip Baseball, Fury Basketball, which was another one that I got a chance to get a glimpse of at IndieCon. Keith Avalone really working on a basketball version to add to the Fury lineup. Matchup Basketball got released, so really had fun playing that for the first time. The Deck Check Hockey was another one. And then I actually got some other games, some non-sport games on the table too. I had 3 of those. Believe it or not, I couldn't believe that it had been since like 2020 that I had even gotten like Scrabble on the table. It was shocking to me. But we had a little family event the other day, and we got a chance to get Scrabble on the table. Tried out a brand new one called Red Letter, Yellow Letter. So that was a lot of fun. And then another really cool game that is a nice co-op, or really a multiplayer game, but you can also play it solo, is Super Boss Monsters. So those are some of the non-sport games that made it to my table for the first time since I started doing my tracking. So while the quarter had like a clear baseball kind of center of gravity, it also had a lot of new discovery mixed into, and I was really happy with that overall. Yeah, so probably, if I really want to summarize what the spring was, it was focused. It was really focused around baseball. I got a lot of different baseball games on the table. But it wasn't so narrow that it didn't have room for other things too. Yeah, baseball was my anchor. But you heard wrestling had a really big project. I had my Gridzone, football league. I had a really big project. And I continued to like churn away with some of the other sports games too. So that really keeping that variety is still one of the keys to me feeling like I can really stay energized with how my table is working. And that really kept things fresh heading into the summer. And we'll get to the summer in just a minute. But before we get to that, let's kind of take a look behind the numbers a little bit of how things have been going. And we'll start with the podcast itself. So over the past 90 days, total plays and downloads, 5,292. That's slightly down from the previous quarter, down about 2.5%. But the audience was at 1,951, and that was up 28% from the previous quarter. So outstanding. Really enjoyed that. I had a lot of really good episodes, and most of not really that surprising. Most of my top episodes were the interviews, and the interviews continue to just really shine. In fact, at this point, my top 10 all-time episodes are all interviews. So you guys are really enjoying the interviews, and we'll get to some more of those in quarter 3 as well. The biggest one was probably my sit down with ST Patrick, episode 253. So just about 2 months ago. And that sits at number 2 all time for me for episodes that were listened to. So that was a really good one. And we also crossed a major milestone with episode 250. And that happened right around the time of IndyCon. I had planned on doing a live show from Indy, but it ended up being a recap of IndyCon, just because I didn't really have I had forgotten my laptop at home. So these things happen and we had to pivot and we made the best of it. But still, episode 250, that milestone crossed and surpassed, and we are working our way towards the next major milestone, which actually will have another one coming up this season coming up. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. All time, we're at over now 68,000 downloads for the podcast in the since we kind of kicked it off in 2021. So doing a really good job there. Moving over to Facebook. So again, over the past 90 days, we are sitting at about 16,000 views, which is actually down about 17% from where we were last quarter in the winter. Not surprising that I would start to see some of the social media stuff go down. Honestly, even I am kind of going a little bit more away from social media more and more, just because of all of the kind of content that is being generated on it. It's not always positive stuff. And, more and more the AI generated content is kind of taking over things. And it's really been distracting to say the least. What people seem to interact with the most on my Facebook page is when I post photos, right? 66% of all of my views come from photos. I think that's also because most of my content tends to be photo driven as well. Surprisingly, 40% of all the viewers are not following the page. So if you're somebody who is getting to my Facebook page and has decided not to follow it yet, I'd really appreciate it if you just kind of clicked on the follow and add it to that. We're up to right now, I think 598 as of last count. So we're just trying to get over the hump there to 600, and we'll really want to look forward to that. Shockingly, one of my top posts recently was me just posting my gaming closet. Over 1,000 people viewed that one post, which is kind of crazy. So that one made a huge impact in terms of everybody paying attention to what we're doing. Now, one of the things that I was really happy to see was the growth of my YouTube channel. So as a result of the Play Nation podcast, and we'll talk a little bit about that too in just a minute, I really started to embrace the idea of just posting my episodes on YouTube and letting that be yet another avenue that people could use to take part with the podcast. So I've always struggled with trying to figure out ways to get YouTube to be part of my kind of social media experience. And it has been a struggle, right? Because I don't really have the time or the setup to really do a recording at this point in time, although it is something I'm always hope to add to the mix. But I did start posting the episodes, so now you can get them on wherever you listen to podcasts, but you can also just tune into YouTube and get the podcast from there. So over the past 90 days, we actually had 476 views of the podcast. And views sounds a little weird because there's nothing to watch, right? It's really just to listen to it. But 476 views, and that was a 30% increase over the previous 90 days, which is really not that surprising because I really just started to embrace this over the past like 3 months or so. Watch time was over 107 hours. That was over 100% improvement from the previous quarter. And then subscribers are up 18. So we're up to 180 subscribers in YouTube. And if you haven't subscribed yet to the Tabletop Sportcast on YouTube, like this is a great opportunity to go over there and just subscribe. So hit that subscribe button and you can keep up with everything that we're posting there from a content standpoint, which really is just the podcast at this point. And then let's see. I think that's our trip. Let's talk a little bit about the Play Nation. You know, I'm as disappointed as anybody that we haven't really been able to kind of get organized. As most of you know, Al started a new job. Like Harvey's got some new things that he is going after, and he might share those more broadly across social media in the coming months. And I've had some, different commitments from work as well. So it's just been really hard for the three of us to find time to kind of connect. And so right now it's on hiatus. I would not say it is kind of like gone for good. I think it's just a little bit on hiatus. And we're all kind of pursuing different things right now and trying to figure out like what we want to do. But we might see the Play Nation podcast in the future, but for now it is kind of in hiatus mode and just on pause, if nothing else. So we'll keep you posted, and you'll probably hear as much as anywhere if we have more content coming in the near future. So that's where we stand from the social media standpoint. The software that I use for recording my podcast is called Riverside, and they have been adding some new tools. So I am hopeful that we're going to be able to branch out a little bit more in the social media spectrum in the coming months. This is something I'm going to have to learn how to do better. It might mean switching my hosting around a little bit. So there's some things that I might be looking into, but they just released some really major upgrades in terms of like what they offer. And it's something I'll be paying attention to closely and trying to learn a little bit more about. But for the time being, at least, they haven't impacted anything about how I'm going to deliver. And we will be getting some, new episodes out. I am hoping to kind of get some, I've talked to a couple of game designers that are going to be popping on over the next couple months. I've got a few other people in the community that I'm going to start reaching out to as well. So I've got some good plans for the interviews. And as always, my goal is to get at least one a month, but as it's worked out the last couple months, I'm almost at the point now where I almost enjoy getting like a couple of interviews in a month too. And so we'll probably do that, especially as we're building up towards Gridiron Games and the start of football season. We're going to really want to focus in on that. And I think that will open the door for a few interviews. So I've got some things in the works and more to come, but hopefully you'll be hearing another interview in just the next couple weeks. That's my plan. So more to come on that front. All right. Not even before, I think our next stop is to now switch our focus to the summer. So why don't we kind of turn the page and on the seasons and get into what the summer has to offer on my tabletop. Yeah. All right, let's talk summer. And I'm going to kind of do what I usually do and kind of walk you through what I've got planned from the top of the house down. Starting, of course, with baseball. So right now I'm doing this 1973 Hall of Fame starting pitcher project. And I've talked a little bit about it, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it since it is a kind of carryover project from the spring to the summer. And I think it's going to continue for at least the next 2 months. I really plan on bringing it to at least September. I do, however, have plans to get one more project on the table with History Maker Baseball. And because of that, It's either got to be September or October that I switch over to that other project. So there is a chance right now I'm saying that I'm going to do the 73 Hall of Fame starting pitcher one up and through the end of August, which means that we could see the beginning of a new project, which is my 1980s Major League Baseball season. And I plan on doing more of a King of the Mountain tournament style with the game for that. So that is something that I am planning to probably spend 4 months doing. I don't think that I'm going to say that the 73 Hall of Fame starting pitcher project is done at that point, though. I think I'm just going to put it on pause, switch focus for a little while, and then bring back the 73 one from time to time. There is a chance, though, that I will continue to do the 73 project through September and then cut it off. I know it's definitely not going to go past September, and then switch over to the King of the Mountain tournament starting in October. So there is a possibility of that. And if that happens, that King of the Mountain one will be one that also then crosses into 2027. Because I know I'm going to need at least 4 months. I might even need longer. So that's why I'm thinking it might be a little bit of a Q4 and then Q1 type project that I end up doing for that 1980 season. So for now, 73 starting pitcher one, which has been a lot of fun. I think I've now had everybody except for Phil Niekro has made an appearance of those 13 starting pitchers that were Hall of Famers who made it to the Hall of Fame and pitched as starting pitchers in 1973. So we just got to get Phil Niekro onto the board and then see if we start looping around to some of the guys that we started with as well. My quarterly project is going to be with Play at the Races. When I started the year, I knew I was going to do a horse racing project. I didn't know if it was going to be the game I wanted to design or if it was going to be Play at the Races. I haven't spent any time really working on my design as much, although I've been tweaking it in the background, but it is certainly not at a point where it's ready. So the fact that they released a historical season with the Play at the Races, the 1978 season was just a little too attractive, and the project that Harvey Couch really put together there, where I've got all these different races already written out, was just too tempting, and I just said, well, that has to be what I do. So this quarter, that will be my goal. Every week, I'm going to pretty much run like 3 of the races. They're fairly quick to set up once I get the kind of cards in order. And I can play through the races fairly quickly, right? So getting 3 races in each week is not going to be a heavy burden. If you've got a chance to play at the races, running through a race doesn't take that long. You know, in 15 minutes, you can pretty much run through an entire race. Most of these races have single-digit horses in them. It's only going to be a couple of the races that have like a larger field, like for instance, Kentucky Derby. But most of them have manageable numbers of horses. I think in the first 3 races, I had 2 races with 9 or 8. I think it was 8. Yeah, 2 races with 8 horses, and then 1 that only had like 5 horses, right? So that's what you're going to kind of get as a mix from time to time. So my third project really, but definitely 2, is going to be horse racing and running through the 1978 Triple Crown season. The great races between Alydar and Affirmed being the centerpiece of all of that. Then we get to my monthly tournaments. And as you probably have, if you've been following along and paying really close attention, you may have noticed like how I'm working through these, where I do a larger tournament for 2 months and then a smaller tournament for 1 month. So what I have planned for the summer is to start introducing some newer sports in here, right? You heard baseball, you heard some horse racing. Now we're going to football. And I'm going to start teasing my appetite a little bit for football as we head into the summer, starting with season ticket football. And I'm going to be doing a tournament for the 1966 AFL and NFL season. I went through, found all the teams with winning records, and actually ended up picking the top 10 teams. There's 4 teams from the AFL and 6 teams from the NFL. NFL was a bigger league, so it felt like they should have more of the teams in the field of 10. So we're going to run through and let the AFL have their kind of tournament going on, and the winner of that will be in the finals. And then the NFL will have their tournament going on. They've got a couple play-in games before they get to their field of the field of 4, really, in a sense. So they have 6 teams. So they're going to have a couple play-in games, and then they will run through, and the winner of their tournament will end up in our big game. And 66 was the first year of the Super Bowl, right? So we're going to kind of set that all up and see if we can replay. Will we get Kansas City against Green Bay? Will Green Bay dominate like they did? We'll find out. But that's the plan, is to play that out. We'll be playing all those games in full play action. So I'm looking forward to that. And then in August, or I guess that would be September, right? July and August will be this 66 NFL tournament. And then in September, I'm going to run through a tournament with the heptathlon. The heptathletes is something that has been offered by Tom McHugh for the game of decathlon. In his centennial edition, he expanded it to also have heptathletes. He released a few more people into the mix with some of his recent releases in sports and magazines. So I'm going to kind of collect all those, put together a little album of them, and run through a tournament with the heptathletes. Haven't decided what the format's going to look like. I think some of that will depend on how many heptathletes I end up having, and they might compete in like pods, where I might have like 3 people competing against one another, or I might just do like a head-to-head competition. We'll have to see how that plays out. So that will be in September. And then we get to our retro replays. I've got a couple right now I'm kind of playing it day by day a little bit. And I've got a couple of adjustments that I'm going to make. But one of the next ones that I do have scheduled, and this ties back into Fascinating Baseball, is I want to replay the 1906 World Series, the Chicago versus Chicago World Series. The 1906 season is the season that I have downloaded to take part, and that's going to be where I do some of the playing with Fascinating Baseball, in addition to maybe mixing in a little bit of the 1994 season. But looking forward to just playing out that World Series and see how that plays out. Will the White Sox still knock off the Cubs? We'll find out. I've got a couple of other things, and I haven't decided the exact order that I'm going to follow right now. And I have a couple of games that I had planned on doing that I might have to adjust away from a little bit. So more to come on that front too. But one of the ones that I'm hoping to start, and I might start it this quarter or during the summer, is a replay of the 1896 Olympics, the first modern Olympic Games. I downloaded this from Roberto Cervini's website, and I have all of it to kind of run through it. I don't know how long it's going to take, and it may be a little bit more than just doing like a retro replay. It might turn into like a mini project, but I am going to certainly start to do some of that and just see how it goes as I go through some of the events. Probably start with like the track and field events, just because that's usually where I like to start any Olympics games. But that is one of the ones that I'm going to take a look at. In addition to that, 2 other big projects that'll be going on, and these have been going through the entire year. Gridzone, we talked about. I'll be getting through weeks 7, 8, and 9 as we go through the summer. And I also will continue to run through my 1992 Winston Cup series using red, white, and blue racing. I also think that I'm going to find a way somehow, like soccer is going to be present in some way, shape, or fashion. I am really getting excited about watching like the World Cup, and certainly want to get some more soccer games out there. I've got a few games that will be getting onto my table as well for things like my featured table Fridays. And that's another place where you're going to start to see like a changing of the tide a little bit in terms of like the games that are going to get played. I'm still going to have some baseball because I still have a couple baseball games that I want to get on the table. But right now, plan for July at least. I haven't planned August or September's like featured table Fridays because it'll depend a little bit on what I end up bringing to the table. But for the featured table Fridays in July, Second Season Express will make it to the table. I've got Heroes and Heels Dodgeball, Season Ticket Baseball, and then Superstar Pro Wrestling, all part of my schedule for the month of July. In addition to 2 additional projects that I've kind of got started in the spring and will be picking up from time to time when the schedules allow it, I kicked off a brand new league for Fury Hardball. As you probably have heard, if you're a fan of Fury Hardball, there's a redesign of the game coming out. I was a little disappointed in the redesign. I think it's going to look really good, and I'm looking forward to some of the newer graphics of it. But the idea of moving away from the vocabulary of it, right? The slinger and the zingers and the stingers and using that kind of like alliteration there and all that rhyming scheme. I really loved that part of the game. And it sounds like they're going to move away from it into more traditional baseball terms. But I really wanted to kind of play into that a little bit more. So I created this new league that I call Flash. And it's going to be all about sticking to those terms. And I've even added a little bit more flavor using some other rhyming schemes to it to name like some of the positions a little bit differently. So I'll probably share an article on that at some point in the near future. But that is going to be one that I also play through. And what I do is I have like 6 teams in the league. And when I play through a series, it means like everybody gets to the table and they play some games against one another. And so I'll get about 6 games in, and I always play like winner stays, right? So they're not going to play the same number of games every single time. Some teams might end up getting more games, some less. And I think it plays to like the better you are, the better your players have of generating the stats and being the league leaders. So that's kind of how my Fury Hardball Flash League will work. And I'll probably share more about that at some point in the near future. And then another project I had kicked off was this Legends of Boxing, running through a heavyweight tournament using fighters who fought through the entire 1970s. The way I established the field was found fighters who started their professional career before 1970 and ended their careers after 1979. That left a couple of guys who kind of were only focused in the 70s off the table or got started just a little bit towards the end. Or if they started in the 70s and went into the 80s, they were not able to take part in this either. But I had a good number, and all of the like top guys were able to stay part of it. But I've got a really good tournament going, so I'm going to continue to do that. I don't know how far I'll get, if it'll be finalized, but where there's openings in the schedule, again, that's going to be one of the ones that makes it back to the table too. And that's a wrap. That kind of introduces you to where we're going. And yeah, the summer is going to be football. I really think that my summer months are going to be really focused on football. There's going to be some other sports that make it to the table too. And I do think that it wouldn't be surprising to me to see more horse racing or doing more things with like tennis. I'm going to be in the mood to do some of these other types of games that haven't really gotten as much play time on the table. And that's one of the things I'll take advantage of with my kind of featured table Fridays. But as I kind of looked at the spring, I realized like a lot of football games took a back seat to baseball and took a backseat to a lot of things. And so it's been a while since football games have been on my table, and I'm starting to get itchy about it, right? A lot of it is also generated by kind of my fandom. The New York sports fan just had the huge win with the Knicks taking the NBA championship. I was really excited about that. And right now I find my viewing and outside of like the World Cup has been mostly focused on other things, right? Because my baseball team has been miserable this year. I am a little bit looking forward to the football season. I want to see like what John Harbaugh brings to the table for the Giants, and that's kind of like getting me a little itchy for football season to see like, are the Giants going to be a different team this year than they have been the last few years where they've been a complete disappointment. Hockey season was a bust for me with the Rangers being awful. So I'm looking for some good news from my fandom space, but it also is forcing me to look elsewhere for my sports entertainment. And as a result, like the gaming table will get different looks on it because I'm not going to be ultra focused on some of my teams. But, it wouldn't be surprising to me to get some more like Knicks on the table. I did order that latest NBA set for Highlight Maker Hoops. I'll probably get some of that on the table from time to time. But these are things that I'll do as like one-offs, right? Because they're not going to be like the main focus of projects. My main focus is going to be on History Maker Baseball. It's going to be on Play at the Races. It's going to be on my 1966 NFL tournament, AFL NFL tournament. It's going to be on my Gridzone League. It's going to be on the 1992 NASCAR season. It's going to be doing some play testing here and there for different games. That's really where my focus is going to be for most of the next couple months. So I'm really excited about it. And I feel like I'm in a really good place with the gaming. And I hope that for all of you, you're finding that you are getting into a really good space as well. All right, next week's show. I don't have anything formal planned just yet, but I do know we're going to get into the latest issue of Sports Sim magazine. We'll probably spend a good amount of time talking about some of the articles there. And then we will probably talk a little bit about some of the other project designs here. And maybe I'll even get into a top 10 list. I have a couple of different topic ideas, still working through it. And part of that is also dependent upon when I can get some interviews scheduled. But, it is also a holiday weekend, so it wouldn't be also probably expect that it's going to be a late post on Sunday night. So don't look for the episode too early, but I am still going to be hopefully posting it Sunday night because I have some things, a pretty busy work week coming up. So I'll need to get that episode out of the door on Sunday, the 5th. So we'll be looking for it at that point in time. That'll be episode 260. Until then, thanks for listening.